Hello, welcome. Good morning, afternoon, or night, depending on where you might be around the world. On behalf of EMD International, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, windPRO 3.1, What's New? I am Nathan Curry from EMD International, and I will be your presenter for today. I will have to apologize in advance. It is autumn in Denmark, and I have a bit of a cold, but I will try my best to be clear and concise. So anyways, there are many changes and additions in the new version of windPRO. Many of them are slight changes in small internal processes, module and basis functionality, etc. So we're going to go over as many of them as we can today, but we'll be focusing on the larger and more visually presentable changes, although we will mention several of them in very, very quick, brief sentences. The presentation should take about 20 minutes or so, and there will be a short question and answer session at the end, followed by a very brief survey. We ask that you please submit your questions in the submit them by writing in the questions section to the bottom of your GoTo interface. You can expand the questions section by clicking on the little plus symbol just to the left of the word questions, and then type your text in the window that appears there below it. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. Questions will not be accepted once the Q&A session has begun, but don't worry if we don't get to your question. We will be sending out a link to the Q&A summary of all questions, so answers for all questions submitted, as well as the link to the recording of this webinar to all attendees within the next 24 hours. And so now let's get started. So the first thing is, this is the list of what we'll be covering today. Then you see there in the center this kind of quick list. Those will be the ones that we just kind of shortly touch on and go. A couple of them have some visual element that I can display, but I think most of them will just be a mention of the things that have been added or changed. Down there at the bottom of the screen, you can see the link for where we have the full list of changes and additions to 3.1, and of course it's linkable on our main web page as well. So the first thing we're going to get into is the new road construction tool. So let me get windPRO over here in the display window. Give that a second to update. There we go. So basically, I've got a project set up here in Norway. I needed somewhere that was a little more hilly. I've already got the height contour information defined, and I've got 3 turbines. So basically what I'm going to do is just add a new layer and say, call it road. Now the main thing about the new road construction tool is it's to get a preliminary overview of your costs related to building a road. Now the primary costs of road construction are your dig and your fill. Those are way more costly than the actual road itself. So of course you want to optimize by decreasing the amount of dig and fill necessary, and therefore decreasing the cost. So this is just a nice tool to get a preliminary look to help you a little bit further towards the construction phase. So got this new layer road, and I'm going to choose the new road object, place it there in the maps window. And this first dialog box that pops up, this is where you define your calculation distance. So that's how far to the left and the right of the road that you want to evaluate. Then of course your grid size. So that's for how accurate you want windPRO to be in the calculation. Of course, the lower this number, the higher the accuracy, but the longer the calculation time as well. So now this cost section, this is of course very, very specific to your project, your site, your country, etc. So this will definitely need to be prices you will need to research yourself to get as realistic of values as possible. Then down here at the bottom you enter your currency symbol, and that's for the sake of the report. So I'm going to say OK, give this a chance here to start up. And okay, you see there it's now in edit mode. So I'm going to right click and say create new road and bring this dialog box over. So then here's where you define the parameters of the road. So you have, of course, your road width. You have the degree of your cut of your slope, your cut slope and your fill slope. Then you have the maximum slope and vertical radius for your vertical elements of your road, and then you have the maximum horizontal radius. Excuse me. Maximum horizontal radius for the horizontal elements of your road. So I'm going to leave these all at default. Say OK. Now windPRO has to get it started here for a second. And I apologize, it's a tad slow today, but there we go. Now you'll see a real-time profile view there at the top. So as I move this around, it adjusts the profile view, and there to the top right of the profile you see the total, the length, the cost, etc. And you can see how that updates automatically as I move the road around. Now I'm going to show you first what happens if you go down a very steep part of the hill. You get an error. So this, of course, is to let you know that this is not possible because the slope is steeper than you have defined in your properties. So I am going to start creating some road here. Just click a few points, and windPRO needs to catch up for a second. And again, I apologize for my cold. I'm going to right click and say stop. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Actually, let me give it one more tail. So I'll continue road. And yeah, just to have some dig and fill. Okay, so now I'll say stop. And you can see here as I scroll through the profile view, there's a circle that follows along the road to let you know exactly where you are. Now, how to really see these dig and fill sections, excuse me, is show section. And as you scroll, you'll see there in the right box exactly how much fill you need for that specific spot. Or rather, this part would be dig. And so if I go over here, and you'll have your fill. And of course, the red areas are areas that are that are beyond the steepness you have defined. So those are areas that will definitely need to be dealt with in a slope or fill. So now if I go back down here to the road, excuse me one second. My apologies, I needed to adjust something there. So if I go down here to the road, let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to continue the road and add another element. Now, if you try to make the road too sharp of an angle, you'll get a little red stop sign, and that just basically lets you know that you've violated the settings. But you'll notice here that as I bend this angle, windPRO tries to adapt the road to keep the maximum angle that you've defined for your horizontal elements. So I'm going to stop again. Then a couple of other things to show you. I'll go back to this point. Zoom in here a little bit. Okay, let's say there's a spot that your road absolutely must go through. Maybe it's very narrow, you only have the rights for that specific spot. So you can right click on this and say road must pass this point. That way it will lock that point in the calculations. Excuse me. Okay, then I'm going to show you how to optimize a section of the road. So let's say you have some room to play with and you want windPRO to try to determine the area that will be the lowest in dig and fill. So I will choose that point and I will say optimize this point to minimize costs. Now, as you see, windPRO will start going through iterations, moving it around to try to find the best cost, the lowest cost, and the least amount of dig and fill. And let's let that run through. So basically, every 50 iterations, windPRO will pick a minimum. And so the more iterations you let it run through, then the more minimums you have, and it'll pick the best minimum out of those minimums. But I think for now, I'm just going to stop it at just past 50. So, okay, so you have your minimum. And then that now, if you had made note of the cost, one second, I'll get my spotlight. If you had made note of the cost up here before, then you would know that this is now an optimized cost. So in other words, a lower cost. So that's about it for what we need to show you for the road construction tool. And again, this is just a helpful tool in getting a first preliminary look at your road costs. So now we will move on. Let me close this for a second. We'll return here to PowerPoint for a second. The next thing is going to be a very brief revisit to the wind prospecting tool. Now, this is basically just our web portal with which to access EMD mesoscale data. So I'll bring open the web page here. First, I wanted to show you that we've already had a webinar here on our knowledge base page right there for both the mesoscale data and wind prospecting. So we won't go over, again, any of the hardcore details. But the main thing we wanted to tell you is that before, wind prospecting was only available to people who had a subscription to EMD mesoscale data sets. Well, it is now available to anyone that has a Medio license. And so, of course, you just open it from windPRO by going up here to the wind prospecting icon and press open. In just a minute, I'll bring this over to the correct window. Our connection's a little slow today, I apologize. And so here you have your visual representation of the EMD data set, and also your global data, CSFR and MIRA 2. And as we had mentioned before, you can zoom in, you click on any given point, and it will give you some basic statistics for the node that's closest to that point. So that's all we'll cover again today and for wind prospecting. You can revisit the webinar for more detailed information. So now we're going to begin our little quick list, our quick visit on a lot of the little changes to several of the modules. So just a second. Okay, so we're going to begin here with these are the additions that have been made to these specific modules. In regards to scalar, there's now the sector-wise displacement heights can now be used with Medio objects as well. Before it was only available for WTGs, your turbines, but now it is available with the Medio object. More measurement heights can be used in the scalar. Turbulence is now also included, and there's a better handling of veer. So moving on to site compliance, there's now support for IEC 61400-1 edition 2, and there's also support for any CFD model that supports FlowRes file formats. So it's not just WASP CFD anymore. You can use other models. And then lastly, for site compliance, there's advanced sector curtailment on individual turbines included in effective turbulence and load response. So moving on to decibel, there's now flexible coloring of NSAs, We've updated several of the country-specific models, and you can now calculate topographic screening effects. Now, this is not part of the ISO standard. It has been devised for the UK market, but we've made it available for all markets when choosing fixed ground attenuation. So, you would need to know the settings that are important for your country or for your region, but otherwise it is there to be used with some default values. Then in shadow, there's been one addition, and that's the incorporation of flicker stop or curtailment with a sort of decision table that'll make it easy for design of flicker stop strategy. So now we'll move on to a couple of the modules that have some visual elements I can show. The menu object, we now have mouse drag for enabling and disabling, so it makes it a little faster than just a choose start point, choose end point. The measurement heights can now be entered with a 2 decimal point accuracy, and there is now a stability signal that is supported. So as you can see there on your in your meteorological data, you have data and data setup tabs where you define your signals for each height, and you can now define a stability signal. Moving on to park, we have the ability to select a more accurate weight decay constant now based on several different definable variables. Several different defined variables. There's now season correction with a check for minimum data amount for each season. And probably one of the primary things is that day, evening, and night noise mode settings, so different power curves for different noise modes, can now be done in one calculation. Now, granted, this is only for time varying calculations, but essentially in your WTG object, when setting it up, you choose the to use for day, evening, night, noise modes in park or decibel. Then in your park calculation setup, you go into your setup tab and your edit periods. Then after that, you enter your time periods, and there's where you can define the 3 settings, and it will use the appropriate power curves for for those time periods. Now, photo montage will be the last one in our quick list. There is now a new browser showing all camera objects by thumbnails and photo names in order to make it a lot easier to keep track of all your photo montage elements in a project that is very photo montage heavy. And we now have trace lines. And this allows you to calibrate, so you can see here one trace line there in the picture, and then here horizontally bird's eye view from the maps. And this is essentially allows you to calibrate one camera object using information from another. So it's just another tool to help you get an even more refined photo montage. So that is it for our quick list. Go back here to the list of things to be covered. Now the next one is a new testing tool. Now basically what this is, it's a regression testing like the IT department does constantly when developing the software. It allows a user to perform a regression test of windPRO whenever a new version or service pack or whatever is released. So I'm going to show you this. We're not going to go over any results or anything. I'm just going to show you how to do it. Very simple. First I need to close windPRO, so I'll close. Oh, forgot to take it out of edit mode. So remove edit mode and then close windPRO. And then basically you go to your C drive, to your program files, and to the path relating to windPRO 3.1. And then you'll find down in the list WP Calc test. So you basically just double click on that, open it, and all you need to define are your 3 file paths. So of course your program folder. Then you define your project folder, which I have right here. This is the project folder for the project I have set up to show you guys today. And then where you want the action log folder or the results to be put, I've left that to the same file path. So now I'm just going to run it. Give it a second here. Okay, now this is displaying on the other screen, so I'm sorry I can't show it to you, but basically what it's doing is it's opening windPRO, opening that project file, and recalculating all the calculations that you have in there to check if the results are the same as they were for the previous results. You should be able to run this tool without any programming knowledge, but it is probably a bit more for the advanced user. You see, and its primary function is it's a tool that will help you automatically compare the results when your project runs through different versions of windPRO. And it will do it file by file and bit by bit comparison of each of the TXT files involved. It also can be very useful in ISO 9000 family of accreditations. It helps, it's faster to check consistency, so it can aid very much in that respect as well. So it's still calculating. I only have 2 calculations in this particular setup in order to make it quick and easy. I have a StatGen and a Park. And this is also something that you need to kind of set up a very basic. I mean, you can have as complicated of a file as you want, but of course that will take much more time. So we advise that you have just a kind of a basic project set up in the way that you normally work, and then use that to test each time a new version or a new build comes out. So it is still processing. Things are a little slow today, so I apologize. But I'll take this moment to remind you that you can submit questions there in the questions box. I see a few have already come in. We've got show you the results on this, and then we've got one last thing to show you before we move on to the questions. So just one second. Okay, my apologies. This is taking a bit longer than it should, but I will show you. Basically, it will put the results into a results folder. You can see there it's created a results folder where you're in the path you've defined, which for this time I've defined the same path as the project file is in. And you can see it's still running, but I think I can show you some of these. See if the Park is, no, it's not done yet. Just a second. Okay, there, now it should be finalizing, writing the file, so yeah, just be another second or two. Okay, we're going to run a little bit over the 30-minute stated time, and I apologize for that. But like I said, things have been a little slower with my computer today than than I would prefer. So, anyways, there you can see it's finished, and now here are the files. So if I open this, and it gives you your TXT result of your part calculation. I won't go into the StatGen, but you can also have a list here of all your project files, so you can double check that as well. Okay, so let me close this. I'll go ahead and close this. The last thing is, and this is just a fun little aesthetic addition that we've done, a nice way to round out the webinar, and that's we've taken the animation functions in Google Earth and made use of them, and allowing now rotating turbines when you export to Google Earth. So as soon as windPRO reopens here, I will show you that. Okay, it's almost loaded. Again, I apologize for my cold. It is the nature of the beast here in Denmark at this time of year. Okay, it's almost open. Okay. But essentially, yeah, it's just now you can export all your turbines into one KMZ file and have them rotate. So yeah, it's just a fun little thing for displaying, just a fun little aesthetic thing. But I'll, while I'm waiting for this to load, which is almost done, I'll take a look into the questions here so I'm a little faster and more prepared when we begin discussing them. Okay, I've gotten a good overview of the questions, so I should be able to get into those pretty quickly once we get this loaded. And my apologies again, this is very slow today. Okay, finally. Let me get it over into the display window. Okay, finally. So I'll go to my objects and I will select all three turbines, and then I will say export to Google KMZ file. And export, and then open, and as soon as it opens I'll pull it into the display window. Okay, here we go. Oh. Okay, so again, it's pretty slow. Okay, let it zoom in here to the project. You can see the animation line up there at the top. I've already got it set to loop, and basically you just will click this little play knob. There's two of the turbines there. Let me see if I can get a little bit better view of them. Okay, you see one there and one there. I'm just going to zoom into one of them, make it a little easier to observe. Okay, now I'm going to hit play, and it's rotating. I think it's a little choppy right now because of my computer speed or my net speed, but that's essentially it. So let me go back here, get down here to our last slide. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the presentation portion of the program. I have received all of your questions. I'm going to take just a second to look at them again. I think I have a pretty good review on them, but I have had a couple extras come in the last minute or so. So here's a contact slide with information on how to contact us if you want to order any of these modules, functionalities, whatever, or just for if you have general questions about them. So I'll give you a second to look over that while I pull the questions out. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I'm going to bring it back to Google Earth. It'll be a little nicer to look at than a contact slide. So let me see here. It says, I would like to fill the road with a solid color. It appears to only show two parallel lines. Is this possible as it is needed to make maps, etc.? I'm not sure if that's possible at the moment or not. It probably is during the report output because that's where you define your maps. But I'll be sure to check on that and I'll have an answer for you in the Q&A summary. And another question in relation is it possible to upload shape files, line shape files of a road into the new road tool? Again, I'm not sure, but that definitely is a good functionality, and if it's not in there, then I know it will be. So again, I will find the answer for that and have it ready for you. Next question is the new German noise calculation standard, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, according to the LAI Hinweis 2016, integrated into the decibel module? I'm pretty sure it is. You can always check with our German colleagues, and they will know all the very detailed specifics of that. But I'm pretty certain it is. Germany is one of our top markets, so I'll be surprised if it is not. Are there any export options for the road tool? Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm not sure about visually, but one thing I do need to show you. And again, I apologize for the overtime that we're going. In the road tool, I'm just going to make a new road here because I didn't save it. But I did want to show you the export of the information for it. So I'll create a new road real quick. Okay. Okay, and I'll just stop. Then over here where you do copy to clipboard, and then I will open Excel. My apologies, I forgot to mention this during that section of the webinar. Okay, get it over here. And then just paste, and you have all your information. You know, what the angles and stuff that you've defined, the values you've defined, your overall cost, and then all the coordinates that define your road. So that can be very helpful to give to the construction companies. And there's another question here, how do we keep the turbines turning? Well, that's a Google Earth question, and basically you just have to go into your settings and set the animation to be able to loop. And then once you press this this play button here, then it'll loop. It looks like it's gotten the pixels have gotten caught up pretty well here. Let me see, I got time. I know we're a bit over time, but I'll take a couple more questions here. Oh, by the way, the road construction tool is included in Basis. There's no extra cost for it. So if you have windPRO, you have the road construction tool. And then have any actual road companies been involved in the creation of the road tool? I'm assuming that means like the road construction companies. None have been involved in the design of it, but we have spoken to a few, show them the tool, and they thought it was a good idea to help educate the developer on sort of blending the world between the developer end and the road construction end. So that's its primary function, is just kind of trying to blend those two sides of the industry. And then let me see, I'll take one last one here. What do you do when the testing tool spots a difference in the results? That's a good question. The tool itself only helps you spot the differences. Explaining the cause of the differences, it's a bit harder. The first thing you would do is to figure out if there is any actual changes in results. So, for example, not just the addition of another column or whatever, but any actual changes. Then the next thing we'd advise would be consult the release notes to look if there's any explanations that we already have for the changes. And if you still can't figure out why the changes, then you would contact us and speak to IT, and we would work with you to try to figure out, what is happening there. So, okay. So thank you for bearing with me, going a fair bit over our time. But that's pretty much time for today's webinar, windPRO 3.1, what's new? I ask you to please hold on for a couple more seconds, because when the webinar ends, a close button will pop up in your GoTo interface. If you press that button, the survey will open in your web browser. It is a very short survey. 5 questions, shouldn't take you more than about 30 seconds, literally. You will also have the ability at the end of the survey to request a limited time trial license for testing windPRO 3.1. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and again, my apologies for my cold. And please look forward to some more information from us in the next day or two, including the link to the video of this presentation and the Q&A summary of answers to all questions that were submitted, whether I got to them or not. And have a good day, evening, or night. And thanks a lot for your time and attention.